Today we expose 6 Australian pie brands that trade on your nostalgia but sell you a cocktail of processed fats, thickeners, and meat flesh that legally includes nerves, blood vessels, and connective tissue. We are talking about pies that scrape the bare minimum legal limit for meat, lean on industrial margarine, and in one shocking case, were recalled because black rubber was found inside the filling. Stay with me, because once you see what is really under that golden crust, you will never look at the servo warmer the same way again. Let's be real. The meat pie is sacred here. It's the footy. It's the road trip. It's a national symbol of simple, honest food. But here is the part nobody talks about. Under Australian law, a meat pie only needs 25% meat to be legal. And that doesn't mean steak. It means skeletal muscle, plus the rind, fat, gristle, and blood vessels attached to it. So what is the other 75%? Refined wheat paste, margarine, thickeners like 1412, textured soy protein to fake the texture of beef, and caramel color to paint it brown. You aren't eating a traditional meal. You are eating a sodium-loaded, calorie-dense industrial product designed to look like a pie but cost cents to make. Because what you are about to hear changes everything about your next lunch. Number 1 is the classic footy pie almost every Aussie has eaten. Number 1, 4 and 20, classic meat pie. 4 and 20 is the unofficial pie of Australian sport. You see it at the MCG. You see it at servos. You see the yellow and blue logo in every supermarket freezer. It feels like the normal choice. But let us look past the nostalgia and read the ingredients on a 4 and 20 classic meat pie. The ingredient list for the traditional 4-pack reads: water, wheat flour, meat, minimum 25%, beef and or mutton, margarine, vegetable oil and or animal fat, water, salt, emulsifiers, 471, and soy lecithin, acidity regulators, 331 and 330, antioxidant, 307B, thickeners, 1412, 412, textured soy protein, seasoning containing wheat, carrots, salt, cereal binder, wheat, onion, caramel color, 150C, vegetable oil, glaze containing milk and color, 160A, mineral salts, 500 and 341, emulsifier, 481, rice flour. So, in a meat pie, only a quarter of the whole thing has to be meat flesh. That meat can be beef and or mutton, which many shoppers do not realize. Textured soy protein is added to bulk out the filling. Multiple thickeners and colors are used to make the gravy glossy and brown. Now look at the nutrition panel. Coles lists the 4 and 20 frozen meat pies, 4-pack at about 1100 kilojoules per 100 grams and around 1920 kilojoules per pie. Each pie has about 9 grams of fat, including 13 grams of saturated fat, and around 838 milligrams of sodium. That is, more than a third of an average adult's suggested daily saturated fat allowance in a single pie. Roughly a third of the recommended maximum sodium intake in one serve. So why is this a problem? Because most people do not eat these in isolation. They eat them with sauce, maybe chips, maybe a second pie at the footy. Suddenly, you are deep into a day's worth of saturated fat and salt before dinner. The marketing suggests a hearty, beefy classic. What it really means is a pastry shell made with margarine and refined flour, a filling just above the legal meat minimum, bulked out with soy, thickeners, and seasoning. If you have ever called this a quick lunch, you are not alone. And if you thought that was heavy, number 2 shows that another Aussie icon is not far behind. Number 2, Mrs. Mac's Beef Pies. Mrs. Mac's sells itself on homely charm. The branding feels old-fashioned. The slogan says, "If it is not a Mrs. Mac's, take it back." Many Aussies trust this brand because it feels more real than some of the others. But the ingredients for Mrs. Mack's Beef Pies 4-pack tell a familiar story. The label lists wheat flour, beef, minimum 25%, water, margarine, vegetable oil, water, salt, emulsifiers, mono and diglycerides of fatty acids, citric and fatty acid esters of glycerol, antioxidant, ascorbyl palmitate, natural flavor, color, carotene, thickener, acetylated distarch adipate, code 1422, onion, seasoning containing wheat, Worcestershire sauce, salt, yeast extract, barley extract, glaze with milk, and natural color. Again, only a quarter of the pie has to be beef. The pastry is built on wheat flour and margarine, not butter. And the margarine itself is a processed fat blend with emulsifiers and antioxidant added. A nutrition document for Mrs. Mack's mini beef pies shows around 416 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams and a health star rating of 2 stars out of 5, which indicates high fat and sodium compared with some alternatives. This is in line with general meat pie averages of 25 to 35 grams of fat and 700 to 900 milligrams of sodium per pie. So why does this matter? Because many shoppers pick up Mrs. Mack's thinking that the homestyle branding means shorter ingredient lists and gentler processing. In reality, you are still eating a heavily processed pastry and gravy product with high fat and salt and a relatively modest proportion of actual beef. The label suggests a comforting, homemade treat. What it really means is a factory pie, just like most of the others, with the same 25% meat rule and the same reliance on margarine and starch. If this is the brand you grab for a quick family dinner, you are not alone. And if you think switching to supermarket label pies fixes the problem, Number 3 will make you look twice at your freezer. Number 3. Woolworths Frozen Meat Pies. 4-pack supermarket home brands look simple. Plain packaging, lower price. You might think you are just getting a basic version of the big pies without the marketing budget. But the Woolworths Frozen Meat Pies 4-pack shows how similar the recipe can be. The ingredients are water, beef 27%, wheat flour, margarine, beef fat, water, salt, emulsifiers 471, and soy lecithin, antioxidant 307B, thickener 1422, onion, hydrolyzed maize protein, natural flavors, caramel color, canola oil, salt, sugar, yeast extract, pepper, wheat starch, glaze, milk, and color. Raising agent sodium carbonate, sage. There are a few important things to notice here. First, the beef content is a bit higher at 27%, but still very close to the legal minimum. Second, the pastry fat is based on beef fat and vegetable oil margarine, not butter. Third, flavor is boosted with hydrolyzed maize protein and yeast extract, both concentrated flavor ingredients that can be used instead of longer slow cooking. Thickener 1422 and caramel color are used in the gravy, just like in many branded pies. So the home brand pie still uses refined wheat flour and processed margarine, still sits near the 25% meat mark, still leans on thickeners, colors, and flavor enhancers. From a nutritional perspective, it is very similar to the big logo pies, roughly a quarter meat flesh, plenty of pastry fat, and a serious hit of sodium and saturated fat when you eat a whole pie. So why treat this as a concern? Because families often trade down to supermarket brands during a cost of living crunch, thinking they are only compromising on brand, not quality. But when the recipe still relies on the same structure, cheap pastry fats, thickeners, and minimal meat, the nutritional profile is not really improving. If you have this in your freezer as a budget backup, that is understandable. Just do not kid yourself that it is a fundamentally different food from the big yellow box next to it. And if that is what the multi-pack pies look like, number 4 shows how grab-and-go microwave pies can add another layer of processing on top. Number 4. Woolworths Australian Beef Microwave Beef Pie, 175 gram. The Woolworths Australian Beef Microwave Beef Pie is designed for speed. Individually wrapped. Microwavable from frozen. Perfect for a work lunch or late-night snack. But speed often means one thing in processed food: more engineering. The filling ingredients for this pie are beef, 25%, water, thickener, 1422, onion, seasoning, salt, sugar, vegetable extract and spices, hydrolyzed maize protein, yeast, maize starch. The pastry component is similar to other frozen pies, built on wheat flour, margarine, and additives, although that part of the list is not fully shown in the snippet. So what is going on here? The meat content is right at the minimum 25%. Thickener 1422 is used to give the gravy structure and keep it from splitting in the microwave. The seasoning mix includes hydrolyzed maize protein and yeast, both used to create a strong, savory flavor. Sugar is added directly into the seasoning. This is not slow-cooked beef and onions wrapped in pastry. It is a carefully tuned industrial formula designed to survive freezing, microwaving, and long shelf life. So why is this a problem? Because the convenience hides the cost. You press a button, and 60 seconds later, you have a hot pie. But behind that button is an ultra-processed food built from refined flour, processed fats, thickeners, flavor enhancers, and just enough beef to meet the standard. If you rely on these for regular workday lunches, it is worth stepping back and asking, do you want your main meal to be built like this? And if you think only supermarket labels cut it close on quality, number 5 shows that long-standing frozen brands have had their own issues hitting the meat standard. Number 5. Sargents Traditional Meat Pies. Sargents is another classic Aussie pie brand in the freezer. You will see their traditional meat pies 4-pack in IGA and other independents. For many people, it is the default family pie night option. Choice's investigation into meat pies highlighted Sargents more than once. In their earlier tests, Sargents' traditional pies were among those that failed to meet the 25% meat content standard, forcing manufacturers to lift their game. In a later test, Sargents' Premium Chunky Beef Royale pies only just scraped over the line, sitting just over 25% meat flesh, alongside products from Mrs. Max and Herbert Adams. Shoppers who dig into the ingredients online describe Sargents' meat pies as containing water, meat, 25%, beef or mutton, wheat flour, margarine made from animal fat and vegetable oil, plus emulsifiers and antioxidant. So again, there are a few patterns. The reliance on the legal minimum 25% meat flesh. The use of cheap cuts like beef or mutton, not necessarily high-quality steak. The use of fat blends and emulsifiers in the pastry. Choice notes that while changes to the code improved definitions, the term meat flesh still allows a lot of gristle, rind, fat, and connective tissue to be counted as meat for labeling. So why does this matter? Because when you are paying for a meat pie, you imagine solid chunks of beef, not a quarter of the weight made up of mixed animal tissue and the rest made up of pastry, gravy thickener, and starch. If Sargents pies are a staple in your freezer, you are definitely not the only one. But it is worth knowing that this is not a generous beef and pastry product. It is a product designed to just hit the legal line and no more. And if you think this is only about fat and meat percentages, number 6 shows how quality control can slip in a way that has nothing to do with nutrition and everything to do with safety. Number 6. Patty's Food Group. Little Meals Beef Cottage Pie, recall. The final brand on this list is not about fat or salt. It is about foreign material. In April 2024, Paddy's Food Group, one of Australia's biggest frozen pie makers, and the company behind brands like 4 and 20 and Herbert Adams, issued a national recall for its Little Meals Beef Cottage Pie 200-gram product. Food standards. Australia, New Zealand reported that the recall was due to the presence of foreign matter, specifically black rubber, in the product. The pies were sold nationally in Woolworths, Coles, and independent retailers, including IGA. Consumers were advised not to eat the product and to return it for a full refund, with a warning that food containing black rubber may cause illness or injury if consumed. So, what does this tell us? That even large, established companies that dominate the pie market can have serious quality control lapses. That your frozen ready meal is traveling through a long, complex industrial process before it hits your microwave. To be clear, this recall applied specifically to the Little Meals Beef Cottage Pie with a particular best before date. It does not mean every Paddy's product is unsafe, but it does highlight the hidden risk that comes with heavily industrialized food. When something goes wrong, it can go wrong at scale. If you have ever assumed that if it is in the supermarket freezer, it must be fine, this recall is a reminder that we still need to pay attention, check recall notices, and be willing to take products back when something does not feel right. Because at this point, it should be clear. This is not about one bad pie. The pattern hiding in your pie warmer. Let us connect the dots. Food standards. Australia. New Zealand only requires 25% meat flesh in a meat pie. That meat flesh can legally include connective tissue, fat, and blood vessels. Choice has found that big brands like Mrs. Mac's, Sargents, and others have historically aimed right at that minimum, with some failing it in earlier tests. Across 4 and 20, Mrs. Mac's, Woolworths Home Brand, and Sargents, you see the same structure again and again. Refined wheat flour pastry made with margarine based on animal fat and/or vegetable oil. A filling that is around a quarter meat, often a mix of beef and mutton plus water. Thickeners like 1412 or 1422 to hold the gravy together. Textured soy protein or cereal binders to bulk out the filling cheaply. Flavor enhancers like hydrolyzed maize protein and yeast extract plus caramel color to make it taste and look like slow-cooked meat. Nutritionally, an average meat pie delivers about 450 to 550 calories, 25 to 35 grams of fat, and up to 900 milligrams of sodium. Add in recalls like the Paddy's Little Meals Beef Cottage Pie for rubber contamination, and you see that even safety can occasionally be an issue. This is not grandma's pie. This is an industrial product that uses the cheapest acceptable cuts, the minimum legal meat content, and a lot of processing to create something that behaves like comfort food. So what do we actually do with all of this? Do we stop eating pies forever? Or do we get smarter about the pies we choose? Now, let us talk about the pies that are actually worth your time. You do not have to give up meat pies. You just need to change what you reward with your money. Here are some simple principles and some realistic Aussie options to move away from the most toxic combinations of fat, salt, fillers, and gristle. Principle 1. Look for pies with higher meat percentages and clearer cuts. That means turning the pack over and finding the percentage of beef or steak in the ingredient list. For example, a beef steak pie imported from Australia and sold in bulk has been documented as containing 38% beef steak, along with wheat flour, water, and margarine, which is a dramatically higher meat content than the bare minimum 25% in many classic pies. The higher the meat percentage, the less room there is for cheap fillers and starch. Principle 2. Choose brands that focus on quality beef and more careful pastry. Premium Aussie pie brands like some Herbert Adams and Boscastle offerings use Australian beef and higher meat percentages, with marketing emphasizing slow-cooked beef and flaky pastry. You still need to read the ingredients. They often use margarine blends of animal fats and vegetable oils and thickeners in the gravy, but you are at least getting more real meat for every bite. Principle 3. Support local bakeries that make pies fresh daily. Your local bakery or butcher bakery often makes pies from beef mince or chunks, onion and stock, thickener, pastry made on site. The ingredient list is usually much shorter, and the pies do not need to last months in a freezer. Ask them which cuts they use, whether the beef is Australian, and whether they use butter or margarine in the pastry. You might be surprised how honest and simple the answers are compared with a frozen box. Principle 4. Try making your own at least once. Choice publishes a meat pie recipe that uses lean beef mince, onion, garlic, stock, tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, thyme, and a cornflour paste, baked in reduced-fat pastry. When you make a pie like that at home, you control the fat, the salt, and the quality of the meat. You can easily hit 40 to 50% real beef in the filling and avoid soy protein, caramel colors, and obscure thickeners. If that sounds like too much effort for every week, even doing it once or twice a year will change the way you judge the frozen versions. These options are not perfect, but they move you from the most engineered pies, barely legal on meat content, heavy on margarine and thickeners, to pies where beef, not filler, is doing the heavy lifting. Final message and call to action. Australian food culture drifted from butcher-made pies and slow-cooked stews to frozen boxes where 25% meat flesh is enough to call something a meat pie. Gristle, fat, and connective tissue can legally be counted as meat. Margarine made from animal fat and vegetable oil replaces butter. Thickeners, soy protein and flavor enhancers stand in for long cooking and quality cuts. We stopped reading the ingredient lists because the pastry smelled good and the sauce was hot. But every time you and I turn the pack over, look for the meat percentage and put back pies that only just scrape over 25%. We send a small message. We tell the industry we are tired of paying pastry prices for minimal meat. So here is the simple step I would love you to try after this video. Next time you are in Coles, Woolworths, or IGA, pick up your usual pie and ask 3 questions. What percentage of this pie is actually beef or steak? How long is the ingredient list? And how many thickeners, emulsifiers, and flavor enhancers can you count? Could I swap this for a higher meat pie, a local bakery pie, or a homemade version at least some of the time? If the answers do not sit right with you, put that box back. Choose a pie that treats beef as the star, not as a token percentage. If this breakdown made you rethink what is sitting in your freezer or what you order at the servo, hit like and subscribe so we can keep protecting your plate, your health, and your family from the worst tricks in the Australian food system. Tell me in the comments, which of these 6 meat pie brands shocked you the most? And what is the next Aussie comfort food you want us to investigate together?